To take us home, take us to the final, we're going to hear from Candela Montero, who's the Vice President of Trust, Safety, and Support for Epic Games. Just landed here from her daughter's kindergarten graduation. Isn't that right? Okay, so please give her some grace. She's just stepped off the plane. And Dirk Bosmans from the Director General of PEGI. And I'm fascinated to hear about the future of online safety in video games. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, everybody. Yes, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. I came from Los Angeles, so I don't know what time it is or the day, but the graduation was great. It's very exciting to be here with you all. As Stephen said, I'm Candela Montero. I'm our VP of Trust, Safety, and Support at Epic Games. What that means in practice is that I lead the teams that are working really hard to ensure that Epic's ecosystem is safe, welcoming, and fun for players of all ages. So the teams that build our proactive safety tools like reporting flows for players or parental controls, which we just talked a lot about. The teams that set up our moderation processes behind the scenes, as well as our content ratings team. And I'm here with Dirk, who is part of PEGI. Dirk, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dirk Bosmans, and I work here in Brussels as director for PEGI, which stands for Pan-European Game Information. We're the age rating system for video games across Europe. We provide age rating advice to parents to help them make informed decisions, and we've been doing that since 2003.
So we've known each other about 4 years now. We first started talking when we were thinking about integrating ratings into Fortnite, which we did in 2023. I think we started chatting end of 2021 about how that might work. But for those who don't know in the audience, can you tell us a little bit more about PEGI's role in the video games industry and how that's evolved over time?
Yeah. So when we started in 2003, the topic that was the backdrop for the foundation of PEGI was violence in video games and the concerns around that. And to immediately take away an illusion, it wasn't the video game platforms that got together for coffee and said, let's protect the children. There was a very clear, self-regulation is dependent on some laws of physics that are very particular. It was the European institutions that put out communication that said very clearly, there is an opportunity here to do self-regulation, to set up an age classification system harmonized across Europe that provides age ratings for parents. And you need to understand that at the beginning of the century, we were coming from another system before, censorship and bans, which everybody agreed that wasn't the way to go forward. Whereas empowering parents, teaching them how to, what they were dealing with, because obviously at the time, video games were as alien to parents as some of these things are today, to today's parents. So there was an opportunity in the video games industry, jumped on that. Now, that was in a time when video games were very much a physical distribution model. And so over time, we have evolved from physical to digital domination. We have a much broader audience, a much deeper offering. And so even though somewhere halfway, the academic evidence that fed the concerns about violence in video games turned out not to be that convincing, that didn't mean the end of PEGI. There still was an opportunity. Parents still wanted to be informed. So we pivoted from harmfulness to inappropriateness. And we continued to do the same level of information sharing. At some point, we reached a very interesting 80% of awareness of parents with children that play video games. And we're pushing really hard to get that even higher. So I guess that is, together with the digital challenges of today, what we're up against for the coming years. Now, on that note of awareness, parental controls are another topic that we feel very strongly about, because I understand, and I listened at the tail end of the last conversation, there was some talk about parental tools put the responsibility on the shoulders of the parents. I think I have a different take on parental controls. It is a way to involve parents. Because no matter what you want to do in terms of solutions, you need to involve parents. Thinking that you can do it without the involvement of the parents is the true illusion. Doesn't mean that it's easy, and you should make it as easy and accessible. So all the points there were really good. But they're often mentioned as a key safeguard for games. But obviously, research shows that adoption rates still have room for improvement. How do you think we can close the gap between the awareness of the tools and the tools in practice, from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I think, first and foremost, I do agree that we should not be relying solely on the parents to set up a digital ecosystem that's safe for their kids. So we do prioritize creating tailored environments based on age-appropriate design for different age groups. For us, that starts with anybody under the age of 18 will have high privacy social setting defaults. So chat is turned off by default. And we have a personal information filter that prevents minors from giving their email address, credit card numbers, home address. We also have a mature language filter, which is defaulted on for all players under the age of 16. Beyond that, we also have cabin accounts. Cabin accounts are the type of account that a child who's under the age of 13 or under their country's digital consent will be placed into when they first set up an Epic account, which is something they need to do to play Fortnite, Rocket League, or Fall Guys. And what a cabin account does is it allows a player to be able to jump in and start playing with their friends. But they're doing that in our highest safety and highest privacy setting while they wait for their parent to provide important consents for certain features. So while in a cabin account, they are not able to chat with other players, they're not able to make purchases, their profile details are hidden, but they can be in that state for a very long time, or up until which the parent provides completes the account setup and provides consent for them to use those features. So everything starts there. I think when we're talking about how to make it easier for parents, something that's very unique about our verified parental consent flow is that we have integrated our parental control setup into that flow. So when a parent goes in to accept the privacy notice and decide what features their child can use while playing Fortnite, for example, they are then guided into the parental control setup flow so that they don't have to then complete that, accept the privacy notice, exit the game, then figure out where they have to go. Is it web? Do I have to pick up a controller? A lot of parents don't want to use a controller at all. And so as a result of integrating those two things together, we have an extremely high uptake of parental controls because we've made it really easy for a parent to walk through that step by step while they complete a process that they have to do anyway for their child to access a digital service. The other thing that we do is with certain consoles, we share a parental controls API so that if a child has chat parental controls set up on PlayStation, for example, then we read that API and we will apply those within Fortnite. If the parent has set them up in both, we respect the most restrictive setting. So we're trying to make some progress into what I think the gentleman was speaking about at the end of how do we create interoperable parental controls, because I'm a parent. I have a 5 and an 8-year-old. We all know we are strapped for time and that it's confusing out there to have to do it over and over and over again. You might think you've done it. You might not remember where you've set them up. So the process needs to be easier. But parental controls, we do think, is a really important tool in addition to creating age-appropriate environments. So we have about 12 over 12 parental controls that are quite granular. So if a parent really does want to get in the weeds and figure out how to curate an ecosystem that they think is right for their family, whether that's very conservative or more permissive, they have the ability to do that.
Very cool. I mean, the difference between making parents opt into certain things or giving them the possibility to opt out makes a very strong difference in terms of the responsibility that you put on them.
Yeah.
Giving them the possibility to opt out of things, but putting things by default off makes them a lot easier to use, I would argue.
Yeah. So kind of along those lines of expanding safeguards, PEGI just announced a bunch of updates to the rating system. Can you walk us through what's changing and why?
Yes, we made the announcement in March, but we're now in June, and so effectively we went live last week with an expansion of our of the categories that we use to give age ratings to video games. Whereas we were exclusively content-based, violence and sex and drugs and bad language and all of those things, we have now followed the example of the single country in Europe that doesn't use PEGI, which is Germany. They use the USK system because it was already legally embedded and rolled out by the time we started thinking about PEGI. They, under the influence of a change in the law, expanded their criteria 2.5, 3 years ago. And so we're following suit now. So we're expanding the amount of questions that companies need to declare to us, which may impact the age rating for their game. To start with, maybe the most impactful one, but not necessarily for the parents and the users, it's unrestricted communication. If a game would be unwise enough to launch in Europe with no restrictions whatsoever with regards to the communication features. So no muting, no blocking, no moderation. It will get a PEGI 18. Do I expect to see those games on the market? I think a company would rather build in safeguards than take the 18, because the 18, and this is why this is more of a red flag to publishers than it is information to parents, is the first port of call of a lot of trouble. There is regulation developing in Europe that would not make that game legal for sale. Terms and conditions of platforms might be difficult. But it is very important for us to share this information with publishers that reach us from all parts of the world and may not necessarily be very aware of the regulatory reality in Europe. So that 18 is primarily important for the publishers. More hands-on for the parents are the two categories in terms of in-game monetization. So if a game has time-limited offers, subscription models, or countdown timers that create friction in the household. Mom, can I get my weekly allowance now because the thing is going to disappear from the shop by tomorrow? It will be a PEGI 12 instead of what it is today, a PEGI 3. Second, next to that, obviously the paid loot boxes. Very controversial, very hot topic. They will go to a PEGI 16. A game with paid random items, which is the generic term that we use, will from now on be rated with a PEGI 16, which is quite the jump, because until now there have been games. We have been informing parents about the presence of paid random items, but we didn't tie it to an age rating. So that got us quite a bit of applause, like, yes, stick it to them, and they were happy. And now I'm somewhat scarily anticipating later in the year when people start to realize which games also have paid random items that they like very much. And then they'll be angry at us on the internet, obviously. But that's fine. That's part of the deal. Specifically, social casinos will even go up to 18. So we have more granularity there, but I'm giving you the top line. And lastly, we're introducing a category called pressure to play, which is things that incentivize coming back to the game, which once again causes friction in the household. Mom, I cannot come to the table. I need to play this now, because if I don't play every day, I'm not going to get my reward at the end of the week. So if you are being punished for not coming back to that game, you lose status, you lose progress, you lose an item, that's a PEGI 12. We did a broad consultation in the months preceding the rollout with our academics and our experts group, but also with a number of public officials that represent all the countries in Europe where PEGI is used. And they all acknowledged that, that sort of friction isn't really good for younger children, and it also frustrates parents a lot. So that goes up to a 12. If it's not punishing, but just there, like these daily quests and these login streaks, we mostly want to inform parents the game will go up to a PEGI 7, which is kind of soft, but it's also in line with what the German age rating system has been doing successfully for the last 3 years. So that's the last category. We are live now. We're gonna expect to see the first games on the market after summer, maybe announced a little earlier, but it's gonna take a couple of months for this to effectively come, I would say, at full speed. But so far, so good. We've had no technical issues, so that's good. Now, I mentioned at the start, we have some safeguards in place. We have that 18. On top of that, we do ask companies, when their game has communication facilities, to show us 3 documents. Otherwise, they cannot get their H rating license, and with an H rating license, they cannot release the game. We need to see their privacy policy. We need to see their community standards to make sure that they explicitly ban or prohibit illegal or harmful content or behavior. And we need to see what the reporting mechanisms are in that game so that players can report such behavior or content. So these are not tied to an H rating. These are minimum standards regardless of the H rating that we want to see in video games. So these are the safeguards that we have in place when communication features are present in a game. What kind of protection does Epic have in place when it comes to these communication features in Fortnite?
Sure. So I think starting first with player settings and with parental controls, the first thing is that we don't have binary settings for chat. They're not just either on or off. There are 4 granular chat settings that a player or a parent can choose when they're setting up their communications. They can choose to be allowed to talk to everybody. They can choose a setting that's called friends, teammates, and connections, which narrows that funnel. They can choose friends only or nobody. So there's some granularity there. Of course, we have blocking and muting, which is quite common in the industry. And we have reporting flows for players to be able to report conversations that they suspect violate our community rules. The way that we've set up our reporting flows is that if you are under the age of 18, any conversation that you report will be accompanied by evidence. If it is a text chat conversation, we will receive the last 50 lines of messages, or the 50 lines before and after you hit the reporting button, so that we have context and we can see if there was a violation that was committed. If it is a voice conversation, for every player that's in our ecosystem, we have a rolling buffer of audio recording going that is stored on the player's device. So we never will see that unless somebody clicks report. And in that instance, those audio streams are sent to Epic for a moderator to review. The reason we take everybody's in the conversation is so that if somebody's trying to really bait you to say something that violates our rules, we have that context and we will enforce our rules against anybody that violated them. We have voice reporting, as I mentioned, is those reporting mechanisms with evidence are always on for minors, or in any conversation that a minor participates in, and in our game channel. Of course, adults that are talking with adults can also opt to turn those on, but they have a privacy option as well if there are no minors in the chat. So we're using a combination of automated solutions and human review for moderation for our community rules. But we also, in December, rolled out a new feature that we call automated reporting. What automated reporting does is that there's a classifier that joins any conversation that has a member under 18, or again in a public game channel, and it is looking to detect patterns in the conversation for high harm interactions. So patterns of conversations around self-harm, around child endangerment, or physical threats. And if it detects those types of conversation topics, it automatically reports the conversation to Epic, and those will go to our high-tier investigators that are full-time to review whether there's been any illegal activity or any high harm interaction that's happened. And the reason we set that up that way is because, in particular, when you're thinking about a high harm interaction involving a child, there could be a variety of reasons why that child doesn't hit report, or maybe doesn't hit report within that 5-minute window. They might be scared of retribution. They might forget. They might want to talk to a parent first. So we don't want to rely on player reporting for that. We want to make sure that that is automatically reported to us so that we can take action against the worst violators of our rules in the ecosystem quickly.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the theme of today has been all about common ground. And Peggy, this is something that you've been doing, working to establish common ground for a very long time. What do you think is the best way to establish common ground between parents and players and regulators, the community at large?
It resonates very strongly with us because we are the result of finding common ground. And what you need to do is talk a lot. So thank you for organizing this, because this is where you can actually start to meet the people with whom you need to find the common ground, so that we can better understand the risks, but also the opportunities of video games. You know, games can be safe spaces, and they are for many people. That doesn't mean we need to ignore when they're not, but be careful with the solutions. The middle ground needs to ensure that they can remain safe spaces. And they can stimulate learning. But what is mostly important for me personally, and I find it sometimes difficult to express that, is I want children to have an opportunity to fail safely, to learn from mistakes, to make them. We often talk about the child's right to play, the child's right to access this or that, and I don't disagree with any of that. But, you know, I feel that falling down and getting up and learning from that experience is, in the figurative sense of the word, part of that too. Children have the right to that. And in a lot of the debates today, I feel there is a very strong tendency for control and prevention, and nothing can happen. Whereas, you know, and that makes it difficult to find the common ground. So I find it a very difficult subject, but I am keen to continue to promote PEGI as an example of where we were capable of finding middle ground, because the industry evolves so quickly. I'm talking about the video games industry. We need to evolve all the time. So as long as we're willing to do that and finding the right people to talk with, we can find solutions as well. Now, another thing that has changed a lot is Fortnite. You know, since we started together, it's evolved into a platform with thousands of developer-made experiences. How do you think about moderating all of those experiences at scale? You just talked about how you do the moderation, but I keep thinking about this must happen at a massive scale. How do you stay on top of this? Because Fortnite is now also a creator platform. How do you continue to do that looking into the future?
Yeah, I think scaling is incredibly difficult. We do rely again on a combination of automated means and human review, but every game that is published into Fortnite is moderated before it is published into Fortnite. And that's really important. And we're moderating about 5,000 games a day. We are, the assets are scanned, and then everything is looked at holistically within context to make sure that the game is not violating any of our content rules. The age ratings is also a big part of that. So when a developer is looking to publish their game into Fortnite, the first step in their pre-publishing flow is to fill out the IARC questionnaire, the International Age Ratings Coalition, which PEGI is a part of. Once they fill out that questionnaire, then local ratings are generated for all of the jurisdictions that the game is going to be published in. And that makes it really easy for players and parents to understand exactly what is within that experience, because it's the ratings scheme that they already recognize. So when a moderator reviews that game, they are not only looking to moderate against our own content rules, but they're also looking to verify that the IARC questionnaire disclosed the right things and that the age rating that it received is the right one. But we are, so that's a big part of it. We're always looking to evolve how we are moderating games and the content that goes into Fortnite, particularly because we are scaling very quickly. But we are over time. It is 5:01, and Steven said not to go past 5. And I went past 1 minute. So thank you all for having us. It's been a wonderful day from what I hear. Thank you for letting us join at the very last minute and be your closer. And over to you, Steven.